they are expert linguists, and they said in 1968, before a lot of you were born, I dare say, conventional orthography is a near optimal system for the lexical representation of English words. So, and when they say that, you go, okay, you know the language system inside out. It's just a pity that so many teachers are not taught why that's true. And I'm going to have a go of doing it in an hour at a gallop. And I won't talk for a whole hour. I'm going to try and finish up with enough time for questions. But hopefully after this, it'll be a bit clearer about why. So the first type of logic is one sound equals one letter, which is fairly obvious. These are my embedded picture mnemonics, the 26 single letter ones. And because I need to have a picture for the slide, I thought, oh well. And I'm sorry if there's any North Americans here that are complaining to me that this is for orange, when it's or. I am going to do an American set. If people are watching, I suppose they won't be watching right now, but they might be watching on if they're replaying. And so this logic is fairly straightforward, and it's what applies in transparent languages, Swahili and Turkish and Spanish and so on. And the really hard part about it is phonemes. Now, I was going to play this nice little app from my iPad, but my iPad is not talking to the Zoom invitation. So this one is called Reading Magic 1, and you can get a free version. And there's also a Spelling Magic 1. And the little boxes down the bottom, if you touch them, they say the sounds of a word. So they'll say cat, and the letter will flash. And then if you can blend that word, then it gives you a picture. And then there's a reverse segmenting one as well. And those kind of activities are useful for getting kids to understand about these phonemes, which are brief. They're variable because a phoneme is really an idea in your head, not something that you hear or you say. We'll talk about that in a sec. And they're hard to extract from words because, and this is another thing I was going to show you on the iPad, but you can play with it in your own time. Because this is me saying, welcome to beautiful North Fitzroy, and you can get these little apps on your iPad where you can say stuff and then see the formant structure of the speech, the sounds at the different frequencies. And as you can see, it doesn't sort of look like anything that would match up to the words welcome to beautiful North Fitzroy. It's just sort of blobs, and that's because the sounds all mesh together when in words. If you have a look at Mark Seidenberg's website, there's the link is down the bottom. He's got some nice demos that I won't play now, but nice demos about how sounds mesh together and how it's difficult to extract that abstract, the sounds that then form the abstract concept of phonemes that then you can map onto letters. And there's a whole lot of other really interesting demos on his website as well. So I wanted to play this because it's funny. And also sounds, we don't sort of realise that sounds are often not as different as we think they are. Once you're a competent adult speaker and you know how to read and spell, you think that t and k are very similar, very different sounds, but I think this video shows that they're actually very, very similar sounds.
Morning, as COVID cases mount across the country, the mass debate is intensive.
Like the glass. I think I forgot to share the sound. Is that right? Did I forget to share the sound then?
Sound was good, Alison.
Oh, was it? I'm sorry. All right. Well, I won't go back to that one. You can see it. I'll put it back on the slide. You can see that. Sounds are very similar. Mast and mask can get very confused in the media. We're having a nice bit of fun with that. Sorry, I'm getting myself in a little Zoom tangle here. So the sounds are very similar. And what you see affects what you hear. I don't know if you're aware of the McGurk effect, but let's see if I can get this video to work. So the McGurk effect sure that the sound is on. Yes, good. This one.
Ba, ba, ba.
Have a look at this.
Ba.
What do you hear?
Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba.
But look what happens when we change the picture.
Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba. Ba.
And yet, the sound hasn't changed. In every clip, you are only ever hearing ba with a B.
Ba, ba, ba.
It's an illusion known as the McGurk effect.
Ba.
Take another look.
Ba.
Concentrate first on the right of the screen.
Ba.
Now to the left of the screen.
Ba.
The illusion occurs because what you are seeing clashes with what you are hearing.
Ba. In the illusion, what we...
Right. One. Yeah, the point of that McGurk effect is that, yeah, there's an influence from what you are seeing on what you hear, and so the importance for speech pathologists getting kids to look at the person that's talking and be able to see, you know, especially for and making sure that kids are looking as well as listening, because a lot of sounds, especially, are very similar, and so hearing the difference between those very similar sounds is important. And yeah, and visual information can assist with that. Now, slideshow. Sorry. Oh, from the beginning, that was wrong. Okay, so just to, a lot of people on here will know what the Australian English consonants are, but just to quickly talk about the three sort of axes on which they differ. So the critical features that they're different, that make them different. We have sounds that you stop the air and let it go in three different places, and put at your lips, behind your teeth, and at the back of your mouth. And then the nasals in those same spots. In the back, we don't have a letter for that one. Then we have these pairs of friction sounds. We didn't actually have a v in English until pretty recently. That's why ov is spelled with an F. Ov. And then and z. And you'll notice that in spelling, often words with a z are spelt with an S, like is and has and was. And then you have words like pretzel and Fitzroy, where a sound is spelt with a Z. It's because those sounds are in the same spot and are close to interchangeable at times. And then this sh and j sound, j from French, as in gendarme and je m'appelle, and vision, treasure, beige on your palate. And then at the back we've got which is a sound that used to have a pair, used to have a lovely sound in Old English, which we write with a GH. We still have it in words like cough and, you know, brought and all those ones with strange GHs hanging around in them at the end. So some of those sounds moved forward and became like in laugh and cough, and then some of them dropped out, like in brought and drought and those kind of ones. So that one's got lost its pair at the back. And then we have and are sort of vowel-like and don't have pairs, and oo is actually, that's a vowel, but we put it in a consonant slot. It's the same thing as oo, but it's performing like a consonant. And then this one, ye, is really e, but it's performing in a consonant slot in words like yes and yellow. You say a little e first, but we write it with the letter Y and we'll call it a consonant. There's two phonemes missing, and I won't quiz everybody about what they are, because everybody's going, where's ch and where's j? And the reason they're missing is because they're hard to put on a chart like this, because they're combination phonemes. So ch is actually t, and then, oh, backwards, sorry, and then it's sh. So when you say chips, you're actually saying t ships. And when you say, for example, jump, you're saying d jump. which is why if you think about kids write drum, or where they'll write j, you know, for drum, they'll write a J, drum. They hear that d, yeah, j, and they hear that similarity of them, or, you know, cheese and trees. They get those sounds very mixed up. And those errors, if you don't understand the sound system, then you can't figure out those errors. So we've got, yeah, those phonemes, and then the two, they're called affixes, those two that are a stop and a friction sound combined. And then we have two different sets of vowels. We've got monophthongs, mono means one, staying in one place, vowels. You don't move them around your mouth. E, o, a. Those short vowels, if you want to call them those not allowed to occur at the end of a syllable or word. Oh, as well. And then those other e, u, those ones, your mouth is static. If you think about saying them, you don't move your mouth for those ones. So they're monophthongs. These ones are diphthongs. A, you move your mouth when you're saying them. I, so they slide around the place. And they're really two sounds. And a lot of children will hear them as two sounds and try to write two things, which, you know, is sort of helpful in a way when they're written with two letters, but sometimes it can be quite confusing. If they're writing, you know, a word like find and they're hearing two sounds in the I, well, yeah, there are two sounds, but we have to classify them as one for the purposes of spelling. And then we have one consonant plus vowel that I class, or most people class as a vowel, but it's got y in it. It's got that y like in you, you know. Where's my mouse gone? That y there plus oo. Where's oo gone? I lost it there. Oo like in June. So that's actually a consonant plus vowel combination. But, you know, the letter U in human, how are you going to call that two things? It's two things. U, like in the word you, but it's like saying the letter X is two sounds. Well, it is. It's k, but it's only one letter, so we're slicing a bit too finely. So we'll have to call that one thing when we're teaching it. Now, triphthongs are three-letter vowels, and some languages have proper triphthongs, and we arguably do. Americans say so they say I and then but we just say because we don't have that final sound in Australian English. So our, your, spellings that with teaching, but whether they're separate vowels. You can explain their spelling by just using the ones that we've already got, so there's no need to have separate triphthongs in your organising, your thinking about vowels. Now, Michael, do I need to do is there anything that I need to address or before I move on? No, he's not waving his hands at me. Just wave at me if I need to stop. Okay, so being aware of your mouth and of the articulatory gestures that you are making when you're talking and when you're saying those sounds helps children to identify, I'll just let you in there, whoever that was. Helps kids to identify the sounds and understand how they work with the letters and keep them in memory. And the lovely pictures there are my adorable niece, who she has, if you know, all speech pathologists who've gone and looked at her saying the sounds on my website have noticed she's got a very slight lisp. And I've got little videos of all the sounds because I thought teachers really, a picture is not really that helpful, but it's very helpful to have a video where you can play and you can replay that sound. And so I've got little videos on my website, which you can find if you want to use them. I'll show you at the end. They're under my spelling list, and every sound in the spelling list has got one of those little videos of how the sound is pronounced. And sorry about her is a little bit fronted. I should have fixed that, but she lives in Canberra, so it was a bit far. Then, how am I going with? Why is it not changing? There we go. Okay, so back to the first logic. So we managed to get 26 letters if we do this one sound, one letter logic, but the remainder, there's heaps more that we haven't represented yet. And so we need another sort of logic to be, because we borrowed the wrong alphabet. We borrowed the Roman alphabet and didn't have enough letters. So then we have to have a different logic to be able to represent the remaining vowels, the remaining sounds, usually they're vowels. So the next kind of logic is one sound can be represented by two letters together, or a letter pair, or a letter group. That's very straightforward for children. In the same way, children know that a square and a triangle are different things, but if you put them together, that's a house. And are two different things, and when you put them together, that's sh. And so it's not complex logic for young kids. They just do have to watch out for those words like pothole and mosaic and cooperative, where it looks like a digraph, but it's not. And yeah, well, these analogies are from Professor Diane McGuinness's work. I've got her lovely book, Why Children Can't Read, was one of the first things I read and went, this is what's happening with the kids I work with. Okay, so that's logic number 2. And then logic number 3 is that most sounds are spelled a few ways, and often it depends on where that sound is in the word, whether it's in the middle of the word or at the end. We have special spellings for the end of syllables that signal that's the end of the syllable. And you can have multiple spellings, or has a dozen spellings. Pour the animal's paw, pour the drink, pour me, and the paw's in your skin, and so on. You can have 4 different ways to write the same sounding word. And this logic again is not too complex for children. There's all those things at the bottom are houses, and they all look completely different, but conceptually they still have all the features we need to know that they're houses. And in the same way, I, as a phoneme, don't matter what you have around it, it's still I, and it doesn't sound the same in find as it does in tie, as it does in night. You can still classify it as I, if you're well organised and teaching these categories carefully. And the good thing about having most sounds spelled a few ways is that then you can have homophones, so that when you see, I think Max Coldhart says, the sail that's in the shops and the sail that's on the ships, you know immediately which is which when you see the spelling. So not only do we encode the sounds, but we're encoding the meaning of the word as well, which is a highly efficient thing, and proficient readers can quickly pick out the meaning, extra meaning from spelling. So that's 3 sorts of logic. And then the 4th kind of logic, which I think is under-taught, and even by us, the people who are doing a whole lot of phonics, is that some spellings represent more than one sound. So this is going back the other way from sound to print, back into print to sound. So looking at the EA in dream and the EA in dreamt, well, they sound different, but that maintaining that spelling the same maintains the meaning link between dream and dreamt, and break and breakfast, for example, breaking the fast. And there's quite a lot of words like that, where heal and health, for example, where the same spelling is there because of a meaning reason rather than because of a sound reason. And so the people who are saying, well, we should just throw out English spelling and just have one sound, one letter kind of spelling, that doesn't work for English, and it's not efficient in encoding meaning. And if you're on about meaning, well, we want to have the most efficient system for getting meaning off the page, and these things that look like problems are actually helping us to extract meaning from print. And so you can draw in, if you're wondering whether this is too complex for children, when they do their drawing, if you remember Mr. Squiggle, anybody who's as old as me, Mr. Squiggle, he'd draw a circle, and sometimes it was a lollipop, and sometimes it was a yo-yo, and sometimes it was a sun or a balloon. Or children understand that, you draw a circle, it could be a few different things. And in the same way, you draw, a circle could be the moon, or it could be a ball of wool, or it could be blood, a drop of blood, or it could be a brooch. Those double O's can all represent different things. That's not logic. That's too hard for young kids, as long as it's taught in a way that's not mixing and matching your logic too much and confusing them about when you're talking about sounds and when you're talking about spellings. So, can we go for time? Yep. Mr. Squiggle, I was going to play you some Mr. Squiggle, but I've got the YouTube clip there if you'd like. That's Miss Jane. I remember Miss Pat. And then we also have special spellings for meaningful word parts, which are morphemes. And we have the classic WUG test here. Here is a WUG. I want to play you the WUG test because it's adorable. I've got a WUG t-shirt, a WUG test t-shirt. There's a whole website where you can buy WUG stuff. It's very beautiful. So now, where's my Zoom thing go? I'll just play you a little bit of the classic WUG test and make sure that my sound is on first. Hang on, let's check again. Yep, share computer sound.
This is a lun. Now there's another one. There are two of them.
To illustrate that what the child has learned is a grammar and not a huge memory bank of phrases, Jean Gleason invented a test called the WUG test.
He did the same thing.
This test shows how children can apply the rules of their language even to nonsense words that they could never have heard before.
Now there's another one. There are two of them. There are two WUGs. Right. Oh, look at this funny one. This is a man who knows how to bod. He's bodding. He did the same thing yesterday. What did he do yesterday? Yesterday he... bodded. Bodded, right. This is a gutch. Now there's another one. There are two of them. There are two... gutches. Right. This is a Bic who owns a hat. Whose hat is it? It is the... Bic's. Now there are two Bics. They both own hats. Whose hats are they? They are the Bic's. Right.
Yes, isn't that lovely? It's going to go into another video. Stop, stop, stop. Okay. Stop. Okay. Those morphemes are alive in children's brains, but learning what the spellings are. Sorry, I'm talking about it and going at the same time. Not from beginning, from present slide. Go. Oh, yeah. So, getting kids to know how those morphemes are spelled, and that we sometimes spell them differently depending on what's next to them. So, and they sound different depending on what's next to them. So when you have a past tense word that ends with a voiceless sound, like, for example, jump, then the past tense morpheme becomes voiceless as well. Jumped. It becomes a t, and a t, not voiced, sorry. And then if you have a one that ends with a voiced sound, then it sounds like a d. Or if you have a word that ends with a t or a d already, then you can't just say, like land, you can't say land and then straight away say another d. So you've got to say land-ed. So that's where you get that ed at the end of past tense. So that's why we've got three different ways to say past tense, ed, but we write it the same way because we're preserving that meaning and prioritising that over encoding the sounds, because that special ed spelling tells us that's past tense. So that's a lovely example of how children do know those morphemes. Typically they know most of the inflectional morphemes, which are on the right. If you have a look at this sort of rough diagram, I tried to draw a line there in it because I don't know why they didn't have word roots there, but they didn't. Anyway, there's meant to be a line there. Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to do it. So English has got meaningful word parts, morphemes, and the free ones are called words. So we have words that are content words, all the nouns that you know, all the verbs, all those kind of things, and then function words that help us put sentences together. That, you know, what do they mean? What does that mean? Who knows what it means, but we know what it does in a sentence. And then in the same way, we have bound morphemes that cannot hang around by themselves in sentences. They've got to be stuck onto something else. And the same distinction applies. We've got lexical, we've got ones that are part of the grammar of the language, and then we've got ones that carry more content. So the inflectional morphemes are the ones in that WUG test, and they're the ones that you can't write a good story without having them, pretty much. So those ones need to be taught pretty early in a teaching sequence for you to be able to make any sense of sentences. And then the derivational ones, the affixes, prefixes and suffixes, can come a bit later, and then word roots, the things like cron and whatever, the meaningful parts that come from Latin and Greek in the main, but they're not words by themselves, but they still carry a meaning, part of morphemes as well. So the 8 inflectional morphemes are plural, possessive, comparative superlative, third person past. I don't know why we still have that really, but anyway, play, I play, you play, she plays. I don't know why it's plays. I used to teach English in Mexico, and the Mexican students would be like, why do you have just that one, you know? I don't really know. Anyway, and past tense, and then progressive, and the past participle, taken, broken, that en. So those ones are the sort of grammatical ones that should be taught early on in a sequence, and teachers need to know, you know, ER, it's a spelling, it's a sound, but it also, when you put it on the word small, ER becomes smaller, and tall, taller. And so that's also the meaning component of it is worth teaching, as well as the sound component. But those ones are not. The spellings, the sounds, apart from that ED, sometimes it sounds like T, sometimes it sounds like D. Most of those are pretty well behaved. The plural, you know, if you have a word like, you know, if you have cats, it's just a S, but if you have box, it's got to be boxes. But kids you could see that boy in the video, when she said, here's a gutch, he didn't say, now there's another one, there's 2 gutches. He said gutches. So that's in kids' grammar in the main, except for language impaired kids. And so then it's just a case of encoding it in letters with that, knowing it's ES, not IS or some other spelling. So they're the inflectional morphemes, and then derivational morphemes are every other bit of thing you stick on the end of words. And we can make new ones up. Like in my lifetime, Watergate became, that gate then got taken off and put on a whole lot of other things like Camilla Gate and whatever, or manse, you know, romance, bromance. You can use that manse to, we're all having a thing with this, what's his face, the Chief Health Officer at the moment, mancing him. Is that a word now, verb? Mancing? No, I suppose not. Anyway. They allow new words to be built. You've got to have a laugh in lockdown. So you can create all new words with derivational morphemes, and suffixes usually change the word class, prefixes usually change the meaning, for example, by reversing them. I don't know that this is new. And we've got a whole lot of lovely, I just wanted to put this slide in because of the lovely sword there, some of the lovely things that you see in ancient art, or old art, I suppose, not really ancient. And so those kind of suffixes come from Anglo-Saxon, the original basic language that English is based on. And then there's a whole lot of word roots that came from Latin and Greek that carry their own meaning. And it's really useful to know what they are and what their sort of standard spelling is. For example, cron, it's not a C or a K, it's a CH because it's Greek. Cron, meaning time, so synchronized, chronological, chronic, all those kind of words. And the kids that I work with, they can get quite excited, especially the sort of dinosaur hunting fossil kind of kids, you know, those nerdy ones that are like, whoa, dinosaurs. If you say, these are fossils of old languages that are in the language we speak today, did you know you were speaking Latin when you said, you know, when you said monarch or whatever? Some of them get quite interested. You know, it's sort of interesting to know where our words come from. And why are teachers not generally taught this kind of stuff? It's very useful in helping children understand how our writing system works and how we spell words. You can add affixes to get heaps of words to add into those Latin and Greek words, and so we have this explosion of additional words, but in fact, the parts of them, the moving parts of them, are actually not that hard to spell. They're pretty well behaved, these kind of prefixes and suffixes. And this is a word sum, a sort of structured word inquiry approach. And you know, that's a very useful thing to use to show children how they can manipulate the parts of words, and when they look at a very long word, they don't have to have a panic attack. They can look for the parts that it's built out of, because it won't be just one part if it's a long word, and getting them to just work their way through and yeah, sound it out and know the spellings of those standard bits and pieces that so many words are made out of. You're allowed to make up new. I was just going to show you, this is funny, I think, because Renee, who works in my office, she's made up a new word. She made it this week. It's lunch. Let's do lunch. It's a portmanteau. So you take two words, pull out the middles and stick them together and make a new word. So when we're in lockdown, we can all have lunch, so we're not feeling lonely when we're at home. If you really want to get into the whole history of English stuff, I highly recommend this. He's very earnest, this guy who does this History of English podcast, and it's got all kinds of interesting background. He doesn't just start with the Anglo-Saxons, he starts with Indo-European and the migrations from the Russian steppe, and my goodness, how words came about and all the interesting things that happened along the way. So if you're a word nerd, I definitely recommend that. And then yeah, also this is this guy here, the red-haired guy, is the son of David Crystal. His name's Ben Crystal. David Crystal is a very famous linguist in the UK, and he's a Shakespearean actor. And in fact, if you Google David Crystal, Ben Crystal, Shakespeare, you get this very funny video that they show you how words have changed since Shakespeare's time, and it actually shows you that Shakespeare is a lot ruder than we thought, because a lot of the words that were homophones then aren't homophones now because the vowels have shifted, and so it's like, whoa, it's very risque. But anyway, I'll play you a little bit of the Queen's English video, and you can watch the whole thing yourself if you want to, or maybe you had before. I put it on my blog before. Just to listen to the difference between how some of the words are pronounced, because that's often helpful in explaining to kids why we've got these strange spellings, like why is war spelt with AR. So let me just get the video. The Queen's English, and I will, oh my goodness, you'd think I'd know how to do this really fast by now, wouldn't you? Share, sound is on, maximize the screen.
How do you say window?
Window.
And wind?
Wind.
And money?
Money.
And love?
Love.
Harry Potter?
Harry Potter.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
How strange.
Yes, strange.
Well, I must be going. It was a really nice conversation.
Conversation, yes.
I must say, I don't approve of some of your pronunciations.
You don't approve?
No, I don't approve.
Of my pronunciations?
Of your pronunciations.
Well, there's nothing I can do about that.
Nothing at all?
No, nothing at all.
Well, I must be going. I'm a guest a guest of honour at a feast.
I'm guest of honour at a feast too.
And I'm in great haste.
I'm in great haste too.
It's lovely to meet you.
It was a great pleasure to meet you too.
A what?
A great pleasure.
Oh, pleasure.
Yes, pleasure. Well, farewell.
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 Aren't they lovely? Okay, now I just have to make sure that that doesn't start playing something else. And I'm going to get back to, sorry, Zoom faffing. Okay. So yeah, I think that it's interesting. I want to show that to a few of my students who are really like, why is this so crazy? Because yeah, the English was written down a long time ago and the words got anchored down, and it's pretty hard to change them now. A billion people are using them. So if you want to look up words online, sometimes kids really like that, and this is a free online dictionary where you can look up the origin of words if you really don't know how to explain why a spelling is the way it is. But Samuel Johnson, who in 1755 produced the first proper dictionary of English. There were earlier ones, but his was one that everybody had on their shelf if you were anybody. He did a pretty good job, I reckon. He gets very, people who don't understand the system, they go, nah, give him a bit of stick. But he had to deal with a lot of different accents. He had to deal with the issue of how to preserve meaning and without, as words are compounding. And he had to deal with the fact that at that time, the learned men, mostly learned men, or learned people generally, would have spoken French, they would have spoken Latin often, and they would have known maybe some Greek. And so taking words from other languages and bringing them into English with completely different spellings, that would have been confusing for them. It was helpful to them to know those other languages and keep those spellings when those words were borrowed into English. And so nowadays, when we don't study languages so much, those traces are lost until you go off and study those languages and go, oh, that's very similar to English. And it's because most of our European languages are from the same roots. And so, the Latin root has, for father, they have pater with a p, and the Germanic root has father, but originally that was the same word. In the History of English podcast, you can find out all about all of those sort of interesting things, which also really help to make sense of the way that words are spelt now. Remembering that, we're very monolingual now, but the people who were writing the dictionary and people throughout history have not always been so monolingual as Aussies in particular are. What else? I just want you to think, for example, for a minute about these words here, play, boy, cry, grey, those ones. They end with a spelling that includes what we consider a consonant letter, letter Y, letter W, letter R. But we don't say that consonants, there's no consonant sound in those words. But if you have a look at these ones, when you say play and then you make it into playing, you do say that letter, that year. You do have to have a year because you've got a vowel here with the letter A and you've got a vowel with the letter I, and we separate vowels with consonants. So we need a consonant there to separate those two vowels and the different syllables. And so it's clever that play is spelt with AY, and playing, there's the word play, but then this is the second syllable is ying, really, isn't it? So rather than, I've taken now, rather than chopping words in half, when I'm doing syllable division, I've started drawing circles around words so that I can have a circle around play and then a circle around the ying part. Because I don't want to choose between morphemes and phonemes. It's both. These words have got morphemes and phonemes. And so I want to be able to say that's still the word play, but now it's got a y sound in it. And it's because of that joining. And that happens for glow. Glow has no w, but glowing does. And glare has no but glaring does. But the in my accent is before the vowel, because I don't say after vowels. So I want to be able to circle that GLAR and then circle the ring part, because the sound is in the second syllable, but the spelling of it's not GLA, that's not a thing. GLAR is the glare. So the meaning is there as well. And so saying to kids, these words have got more than one layer. They've got a sounds layer, they've got a meaning layer, and we're going to learn about both of them. This is word study. you are going to be an expert in how these words are built, not just sounding them out, but also learning about their structure. I think is the way to go. The word in Australian English, we don't say saw the way it used to be said, as in I saw you. We say saw. Now when we say sawing, we've got an in there because we don't say sawing like sawing. I don't know if Americans say that, sawing. You can tell me in the chat if you're an American. So with vowel change, some of those things have been lost, but most are still there. Okay, we're coming up to 1:45, got to go fast. We preserve the meaningful spellings when sounds and word stress changes, and in English, because it's a stress-timed language, the stress of words matters for the meaning. So if you think of the word record and record, and there's a lot of words like that, like content and content. One is they usually it's a noun and a verb pair, and the stress shifts, and that's what changes those homographs into different words. And in the same way that the shift in stress that happens when we add suffixes in particular, often then changes the way the vowels are pronounced. So tenacious and then tenacity. So the A becomes an A. That E in extreme, I would say E something E, becomes extremity, that's an F. And so there's a lot of this short long vowel pair thing going on in, I'm not sure about short and long. They're not really too different. They're not short vowels are not short versions of long vowels, but that's the terminology that people use. So I've kind of decided to suck it up. Child and children, that's an it, and then O and O and U and Then, as I said before, that heal and health and south and southern. You don't want to change the ow in south into with just a U, because then you've lost the word south in the word southern. And so it's good to point these things out to kids and say, and get them to try and juggle the word stress and juggle the sounds in and out. You might, I don't know, can you say to yourself that word there, SYNECDOCHE? Can you say just to yourself, since we're all at home by ourselves, how would you say it? And because this is, if you're a Philip Seymour Hoffman fan, you probably know this. And I have got a video snippet, which I won't play now because I want to leave time for questions and discussion. So this word is, if you look at the video, you'll see people going, they try the plausible possible syllable breaks, the plausible sounds. And the way to say it is synecdoche, it's Greek. So you've got that, and that's an it from Greek. Here, that letter Y is an it, synecdoche, meaning when you're talking about the part of something, you talk about, when you're talking about the whole of something, you just refer to the part. So if you're talking about, it's a literary device. So if you're talking about a man who's got a very large nose, and then you say, and then Big Nose walked in, you're really only talking about his nose, but you're really talking about, you in the sentence you're talking about his nose, but actually you're referring to the whole person. So that's what synecdoche is, part whole relationships in literature. Use it 5 times in a sentence today. But yeah, it's very interesting to watch adults trying to figure out how to pronounce that, because you realise that when you attack a new word, you've got a whole toolkit, and it's that toolkit that we're trying to teach kids to use when they're sounding out words, and then when they go and read and they're mapping words into long-term memory in that reversible process so that they can then spell them in their own work. Yeah, it's really important that they have the toolkit, that they know what the possible combinations are. And then they can use that set for variability skills. So knowing how to hear a word that's, you know, it sounds like a bit like it's underwater, or it's pronounced by someone who doesn't have has an unusual accent, for example. And you still know what they mean. And so when you're reading to yourself and you say a word a slightly funny way, but ping, you suddenly realise, oh yeah, I know that word. Then you can start to map it into long-term memory. But you know, good readers really look right through a word. And, you know, if you say to an adult, if you tell them an unusual name, what adults usually say is, how do you spell that? And they're not wanting to spell it, they're wanting to remember it. They're wanting to code it and into long-term memory. And your spelling really helps you to remember words and be able to pronounce them correctly when you do come to want to use them in your oral language. And so there's this reciprocal relationship that goes on between spelling and reading and oral language. And you know, the bigger vocabulary you have, the more chance there is for that light to come on when you say something a bit wrong when you're sounding it out, and figure out what that word is, and be able to then map it into long-term memory for spelling. Okay, just try and wrap up. So yeah, I think David Kilpatrick taught us last year key priorities for teaching kids to read and spell, and I would say reading and spelling have to be reciprocal processes. I think most of everybody here would probably say that. You don't just sort of teach kids to read and then bolt a bit of spelling on later on. So they need to learn phonemic awareness and how to quickly take words out and put words into sounds, so that they can do that thing where when the sound changes, they can whip sounds out of word and put new sounds in. And cope with the changing stress patterns in long words. And then phonics, obviously, although, you know, phonics, sometimes I think, can we just use a different word? Because so many people have a rash when you say phonics. Phonics and word building or morphology. And the term that seems to be around now is speech-to-print structured literacy. I noticed on the Spell Talk with Listserv today, there was a thing where people are talking about how can we persuade people, you know, talking points when you're talking to people about speech-to-print structured literacy. You cannot make sense of our writing system if you start from letters. It's just a mess. You have to start from the sounds, work to the letters, and then work out how to build words and make words longer with those meaningful parts. So that sort of phonics, not, you know, the E is for elephant kind of phonics. And then lots of reading connected text, because ultimately we don't teach children all the words that they need to spell and read. They need to teach themselves, and so they do that statistical learning when they're reading, and when they're writing, they can use those patterns again if they're reinforcing those patterns. And lots of spelling. I should have written spelling there, obviously. Lots of reading and writing. And usually in programs, you want to do, first of all, teach one or two spellings for the short vowel words, the a, e, I, and maybe o as well. And then put consonants next to them, because consonant strings are hard to hear. The inside consonants in words are particularly hard to hear. So teach those. Someone's just arrived. My goodness. And then go and teach the inflectional morphemes, the ones that are part of the grammar of the language. Then go on to teach the rest of the vowel sounds, including vowels at the end of words, like A and all those ones that can go at the end of the word, and other major spellings like as in cell and as in gem. And then go on and teach how to build words, and you know, from after grade 2, hopefully, or you know, from the rest of primary school, really dealing with the unstressed vowel, the way that vowels are reduced when stress changes, and word building and making longer and longer words in the advanced code. And why is it not turning? Yeah, this is the thing that I was laughing about. It's like, advocating for a speech-to-print structured literacy approach in a school setting. You do not see the word phonics there, and maybe they're being clever. Maybe we just sort of use speech-to-print structured literacy approach and see if that will help teachers to be able to get more into working on code and really understanding how the writing system works, yeah, get away from some of the stuff that is happening at the moment with teaching kids to read, and really understanding the logic and the brilliance of our spelling system. And we've got 7 minutes as far as I can tell, and so I'll stop now.
Thanks so much, Alison. That was a wonderful presentation. So the acronym, teachers and educators love acronyms. The acronym is STPSLA rather than phonics.
It's not very good, is it? Anyway.
Rolls off the tongue almost.
I'm
All
just
right.
letting anybody in now.
Yes, good idea. Now, we were limited, unfortunately, tonight. So if you do know somebody who could not get in, even though they were registered, we had over 400 registered. Unfortunately, tonight, I don't know what happened with Zoom. I've been trying on the back end throughout the presentation to let people in. But even though we've got a license for 600 people, I don't know, it seemed to default to our earlier license of 100 tonight for some reason. So if you do know somebody, please apologise on my behalf. I've already sent out about 30 emails in the last few minutes to people. So sincere apologies, but thanks so much, Alison. We really learnt heaps tonight. We've got a few questions and about 8 minutes to go. So I think we've got some questions. Tanya says, hi, Alison, can you let me know the source of the visual mnemonic alphabet shown at the beginning of the talk?
Yeah, my website. It's called Embedded Picture Mnemonics.
Yes, Karen's actually said that.
Oh, yeah.
Log down.
Yeah.
It's Karen.
Yeah, there's more pictures than just those alphabet ones. There's ones for every sound. So the idea is to make a sound wall and, you know, just add a sound and get kids to add words and then refresh the words so that you can, rather than having a word wall where it's alphabetical and, you know, under K, everything starts with, under the letter K, everything is like knit and not and no. You've seen those ones.
Do we have any other questions? Amelia has asked, I've noticed so many kids we work with have difficulty with strong verbs and overuse the ed suffix. Do you have any suggested resources for explicitly teaching these?
Well, that's you know, speech, but the kids who are not coping with the strong verbs or the irregular verbs, there's a lot of kids on speech pathology caseloads. So I'd be, first of all, checking what their oral language is like more generally if they haven't really figured out what's regular and what's not regular when they're well into school. And speech pathologists have got lots of resources for teaching kids about verbs and, you know, language, all kinds of language. So, yeah, for kids who say, I ringed the bell, well, if they don't know rang in their oral language, they're not going to know it in their written language. So really, you've got to teach it in their oral language first. So it's something that speech pathologists all do. And there's lots of resources in the speech pathology world for that kind of stuff. If it's in their oral language, but not, I'm assuming you're talking about kids who don't say rang and then write ringed. I haven't really seen that. It's mostly kids where it's coming from their oral language. That makes sense.
And Jeanette's just asked, could you please put your website on the screen again?
Sure. Where is it? I'll show you where those, I didn't show you those little video clips. Somebody's just arrived. My goodness. Let me just find, I've got it here, hang on. So it's alphabet.com.au. And I'll show you where those video clips are. I'll just make it a bit smaller. And I've got a... oh dear. I'm zooming all day and now my brain is fried. Okay, so yeah, so this is my website. And if you have a look, see here, spelling lists. This is someone who thought it was 7 o'clock maybe. If you go on the spelling list, you can see there's 3 boxes here. I want to put a morphemes one as well, but getting it done, I'm working on it. So we've got a reversible code, and this is very phoneme grapheme correspondence related. It's not helping with any etymology or any morphology really. But if you go into sorted by sound, you'll see there's a list of all the phonemes. And so then if you want to hear a phoneme or want to play a video to your class, here is my lovely niece saying, and you can say it heaps of times, because I thought that a lot of the videos on the internet, you know, you can't just keep playing that same sound if you're working on that sound, because it's in a string of a whole lot of other phonemes. So I cornered her one day with my iPhone, and every one of those phonemes, there's a sound as well. Because sound, yeah, trying to represent what's a sound and what's a spelling, it gets very messy if you're just doing it in print. So I found it helpful to put those on there. And then Americans come along and say, oh, we don't say it like that. And I'll show you where the embedded picture mnemonics are. They're in my shop, which is, you can click on the shop and then it's there. So there's a wall chart version that you can use and write the words around if you're putting them up on the wall, and then you can just write words on and rub them off as you're refreshing the words. Or there's a flashcard size that you can use for word building, or yeah, for people I found people were getting the poster size and cutting all the white off, and I thought, oh, trees. Yeah, that's where it is.
All right, well, I think there are no more questions and we're almost at 7 o'clock. So thanks so much, Alison, for giving up your time. And thanks to those 100 people who were fortunate enough and early enough to get in before Zoom cuts you off. And as I said before, if you do know somebody, please apologise on my behalf if they haven't already emailed me. Next week, we've got Ray Boyd, principal, very experienced principal, 2014 WA Primary Principal of the Year. He's currently working for the WA government in the fight against the coronavirus. But he'll be talking next week, not about that, but about leadership structures that enable highly effective teaching in schools. So we really look forward to Ray next week, and hopefully I'll be able to solve the Zoom problems. So again, sorry about that, because there were a lot of people wanted to see you tonight, Alison. Only 100 got in there. But this
you
will
can
be
put it
up
on the website, yeah?
It'll be on our YouTube channel tomorrow. I'll make sure it's a priority first thing in the morning to go on the website. So if anyone's missed out, or if you know anyone, point them towards our YouTube channel. Thanks very much, everyone. And again, thanks, Alison. See you next time.
Pleasure. Thank you,
Thanks.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
We've got someone still in the waiting room.
I'm trying to stop. Yeah, well, dear, dear.